Hi, my name is Daniel Carter, and I'm with ColdFire Inc. This is my lead mechanic, Ben Hall. Today, we're going to be installing our ColdFire Starting System on this 95 Ford pickup.
Today we're going to be talking about how to install the ColdFire Starting System. The first step that we need to do is find the heater hoses that go into the cab. And on this particular vehicle, they are right here. Now that we found our heater hoses, our next step is to find out where we're going to mount our valve. And for us, on this particular application, it's going to be right here on top of our fender well. So the first thing that I've done here is I've mounted this valve to this mounting plate, because this plate is what's going to be mounted to the fender well inside the truck. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap these in thread tape. These angled fittings are not provided in the kit that you will have. We had to buy these fittings for this particular application. So our next step is to be putting these angled pieces into our valve. And they have to be positioned in such a way that we can angle our hoses into the fittings. The rest of these fittings that you see on the vise, they actually do come with the kit that you bought. Based on what your particular installation needs, you may have to buy some fittings to custom fit this valve into your pickup or piece of equipment. Okay, now that we've got our angled pieces on, we're going to be putting these hose adapters into these fittings here. The next thing we're going to be installing are these quick connect fittings here. And both of these do come with your kit, and both of them go on these fittings right here. Once they're nice and tight, you can take your valve out of the vise and we're going to go install it. First, what we're going to do is we're going to mark out our holes with our bracket and drill our holes. Our next step is going to be mounting the valve, and like I said before, here we're going to be mounting the valve onto the fender well. On this particular application, we have 5/8 hoses, and you need to make sure that you know what size of hose that you have before you order your kit. So first, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to measure your hose before you cut. And we have measured our hose right here and made a mark. We're going to clamp it on either side of the mark, so that once we cut it, no coolant's going to spill out onto the engine compartment or onto the ground. I do have a set of hose cutters right here. You can use a razor knife, or you can use a set of hose cutters like this and just cut your hose. Now what I've done is I have drained the coolant just a little bit so that I don't spill anything. I'm going to take my clamps off because I've got to run it through, right through here and up into our valve. Before we move on, you're going to want to make sure that you put your hose clamp onto your hose before you put your hose onto the fitting. Once you get that hose onto the fitting, it's not very easy to get it off of there. And another thing you're going to want to think about before you put your hose clamp on is making that nut accessible. Okay, once your hose is on, your clamp is tight, you're going to want to pull on the hose a little bit to make sure that it doesn't come off. Alright, so for this particular application, this section of hose is actually too short. So this section of hose is a little bit longer. We're going to be running from our cab heater core into our valve, and that's going to be replacing this hose here. So now we're going to install our new hose onto our heater core. You're going to want to do the same thing we did before. We'll just pull on that hose just a little bit to to make sure it doesn't pop off of there. And then we're going to repeat the process that we did down here. We're going to put our hose clamp on, put it onto our valve. If you do have hoses that are rubbing together or rubbing on something else, what you're going to want to do is put some zip ties on there so that they don't rub a hole through the hose. So this right here, it completes our loop from our thermostat, goes through our valve and into our heater core. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install these caps. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this little loop over our quick connect fitting on each one. Put the caps on. This way no debris or dirt gets onto our quick connect fittings and into our system.
There you have it. That was the installation of the ColdFire system on this certain application. There's going to be different times where you're going to need different parts, different tools for each application. That's why we highly suggest that you take it to a certified mechanic for this. Thank you.